yes, Empire, arguably one of the favorites for the tournament, up against one of NA's last hopes in Oxygen. This should be a tight game, though there is a chance here that Empire could run away with it. Oregon is map number 1. It was picked by Oxygen, and they're going to have to breathe deep to find something to go with on this game.
Well, as you said, we'll get straight into Oregon between these two behemoths, because let's not forget, Team Empire has now got a newfound reputation coming into the group stage, blowing everything out of the water, at least on my stat sheet, considering they finished 9th place in their regular league against the first place NAL team, and it's like roles have switched. Both of these teams seemingly doing the opposite of what they did in their regular league here. And this is an opportunity for Oxygen to show us it was just a bad few days in the groups. And they were able to have that last 3-0 day to propel them into the upper bracket. First ban comes out. Are we surprised that it's a Thatcher ban? Not really. In fact, every time Empire's played Oregon the past few matches throughout the group stages, they've banned Thatcher every time.
Oh, here's an Ash ban from Oxygen. Okay, there, I see you, mate. And this is something they've done a couple of times. They did it against Space Station in the NAL, then they did it against MIBR in the 6 Invitational groups. They also did it against Makers in the groups. So not something we've never seen. A lot of people do like to ban Ash against Empire to try and throw Joystick off his card. He ends up just going on the Hibana most of the time and destroying everyone anyway. So I don't know if that's going to have a massive impact in terms of comfort picks. But in terms of simply just reducing the amount of explosive utility on the attacking side, I could see that having some impact.
Especially on a map like Oregon, there's always going to be that shield play. We see it top floor, we see it bottom. A lot of the time he's been defaulting to Jackal nowadays as well. So he has quite an arsenal of operators he can take. And I know we're harping on about the Cyborg himself, but he'll start on Malusi. They're starting on the defense here, and they've decided to go downstairs. That's an interesting one for me at the very least here, because they prefer to go top floor for the most part, James. Statistically, they do prefer that top floor. So they're not going to give away the predictable site here. They're going to go downstairs instead. And as a result, they'll get rid of that Echo, bring the Kaid for the hatch. And now they'll be able to hide the fact that they've, 1, got that Kaid to work with, of which Foxay is going to have to deal with the hatch now. And 2, that they're starting downstairs.
Yeah, and for Empire, we have a quite strong operator lineup in terms of anchoring down. Almost all of these operators are really good for sitting on that bomb site, reinforcing your positions. We've got this typical shield in elbow. No doubt ADSs from Always will be there to protect. The Thatcher ban is going to make opening up the meeting hatch quite difficult, as Scyther will have an electrical on that. And overall, Empire pretty solid just anchor setup. So I think here, for me, the key thing is Oxygen making sure they have enough time to clear out this site presence after they go for a roam clear. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a loose roam from Empire, maybe Dan running around upstairs, maybe Always, but we will have to wait and see for that one.
Well, you don't see a lot of Legion these days, just purely because there's other operators that take precedence over it. And the good thing for Oxygen, there was early drone set up. Kino was also droning very quickly on in, so they're able to make a very swift entrance. And I think this is what differentiated Oxygen from the first few days of groups to the last day of groups, where they absolutely stomped all of the teams they went up against, was the speed and the confidence at which they approached that particular game, or that day's worth of games. And that's something that we're seeing here, coming in, not letting Team Empire, being a really fearsome opponent, stop them from getting site and map control as quickly as possible. And Yoga, he had an absolute field day on the last day of groups. I'll bring up his stats shortly for you all, but for now, looks like the mid and top floor is all Oxygen's, and Empire, they're going to run the turtle strat to be able to deny this.
For me, one of the win conditions for Oxygen is the performance of their newbies, of their rookies. So we've got Kino, who plays the support, been arguably Rookie of the Year in the NAL, his opening round. He found an ace on Thermite. He's been pretty nuts overall. Yoga has been a name on our lips a lot in the 6 Invitationals so far. Really strong on the entries, really unhesitant as he pushes on forward. Both players came in as, this is their first real experience in Tier 1 or at like a major LAN event. They have played in Challenge League in the past, but of course the pressure can get to you if you don't quite have the experience. And of course we do have experience on the other Oxygen players and of course on Empire. So I'm going to keep my eye on how these two rookies do go.
You and I often talk about how a front push through Freezer down main stairs doesn't oftentimes work. Kino says, oh, let me slap the Cyborg off the earth very early on here. Really huge pick here. And that will be the opening kill going the way of Oxygen. And with 60 full seconds left, they are making Empire sweat as they are dancing around. Dan, though, with the T5, he'll take a kill back for himself. And standing in the middle of Closet there for some reason is Scyther. And there was so much time here for Oxygen to work with, James, and I'm worried because as a result, they're just going to keep getting picks as Empire are throwing bodies left, right, and center.
Only the two rookies who have found picks so far for Oxygen. Shepard to hold on. Big player here on the big operator of smoke, but no gas babes remain. 25 seconds left. A big pick onto the support for Oxygen and always jumps into the fray as well. 2v2 now as Oxygen have to go deep. Always has a long line of sight to contest Freezer, but it's up to Shepard on the bomb site to hold. Foxay to force his diffuser down. Yoga to cover, finds one. This is massive for Oxygen in the opening round. As that diffuser is planted, always going to have to make this a 3K in the 1 versus 2 clutch on the retake. 39 seconds left, long angle contested. Jaeger with the new recall, not going to be too much trouble for Always. Ran in the corner and Foxay wins the fight. Oxygen take the first round here on Oregon.
What a statement to make, James, coming in against one of the highest rated teams of the Six Invitational, especially in the upper bracket. We didn't even think Oxygen would make it out of groups after the first couple of days, nor did we think they would make it into the upper bracket. And with that singular round, they have set the pace for this enormous matchup between North America and Europe. And the big thing for me as well, you and I, we said, Yoga, what an impressive run throughout the groups. But there is a player who is also stepping up in Oxygen, and it's Foxay, who is 0.01 higher in rating. In fact, there are 2 players from Oxygen who have the highest rating when it comes to overall rating throughout the groups. Foxay is 3rd highest rated, behind Joystick and Palu, and then Yoga is 5th highest rated. There's 2 Team Liquid players, Joystick number 1, and then, of course, 2 Oxygen players in the top 5 throughout the groups. And so you are seeing some really big hitters in the lobby today. Rating overall, I mean, okay, yes, Joystick is running through them, but Yoga on the entry is 2nd throughout the entire Invitational. So it is not a surprise that he is entering the map quickly, smoothly, and confidently because his stats show us he's not afraid of anyone when he enters a map.
To take a quick respite from this game, there is 1 minute left in the final round of BDS versus NIP on map 3, so you should quickly open up the A stream and watch that as it finishes, and then keep watching this. It has just finished, so I won't spoil the result, but a massive game there on the A stream as we just get started here in our second match of the B stream. Oxygen started very, very strong with that first round. Vertical and Yoga, 2 of those big fraggers for OXG, and they've made their way inside without too much trouble. Empire once again, full turtle strategy.
Interestingly, they're going to go back downstairs. They want to retry it. It's almost as if they know what they did wrong that round, and maybe it's throwing bodies that the problem was not the answer. You can't always fight fire with fire, and Empire have learned that the hard way in the first round. Sometimes I like to commend teams that go back to a site they just failed because it shows me that they're clearly confident that they know what went wrong. But I also sometimes think it's a big failure because it gives the attacking team an opportunity to also work on any mistakes they had made. Win or loss, it doesn't matter. And Oxygen now, they have momentum behind them. So that's going to be a big key playing factor here for Oxygen as we see players opening up all of the hatches. Not a Kaid in play again here, so these hatches are going to get done for free.
Nice usage of the Aruni gate, but Kino can easily dispatch of that with the flash. Still 5v5, a lot of time to work with. It's the pre-execute, which is key for Oxygen. Last time they found some very, very strong opening picks. We'll be looking to see how they can set up for this execute. Looks like they're actually tempted to go for a blue push this time with so many players around these rear stairs trying to flush out Always from the bricks position.
It's almost impossible to adapt to your mistakes that you made last round if the attackers do a completely different push. This is what I was worried about. The flexibility, the adaptability here of Oxygen. That's what's going to give them the little bit of a leg up here on this round. They make good time of the map, but they don't hit their shots, and vertical falls yet again as the opening death for Oxygen. Always being able to capitalize on those backstairs. Get yourself a second, my friend, but those missed shots, they'll come back to haunt him later on as he is down tremendously over towards the pillar door, and he's holding it down by himself in a position you usually see one of his comrades, I'm going to call them in the EUL. That's Shiko spot, we call them. And as a result, now it is all up to Oxygen to get past these smoke babes as...
Foxay dropped.
Oh.
Now he's down, but traded out once again. Empire biting back for every single inch of ground that Oxygen take. 25 seconds. As Oxygen wait. What is the execute here? Side that a hold on. Empire don't need to get aggressive here, but Shepard finds one, and all of a sudden it's shut down. Empire 3 for 3, and they find their first round.
I wonder whether or not that early time advantage that Oxygen had again. They were opening up all the hatches. They got meeting. They got freezer. They were in nice and quick. Really good pre-placed drones, which propelled them into the building very quickly. And then there seemed to be a call, and I don't know if this happened during the drone phase or whether it happened mid-round, that they were going to rotate down towards blue, etc. Get the back stairs. The problem with that, James, is when you do a back push like that, you need to start from the beginning of the round. It takes a lot of utility. Elbow hold is tumultuous to get past. You got to cook all the ADSs, destroy the shield. There's so much that goes into a blue push. It's why you see teams start there rather than on the other side of the map. It can oftentimes take way too long. And well, for Empire, they capitalized on it. Good set of kills. Look at all of those 2-2-2 kills on the side of Empire. It's only Joystick at the moment. The Cyborg himself is just waiting to warm on up into the match. We saw this happen during the group stages, didn't we, James, when he had a bit of a quiet first half and then he unleashed in the second. It was incredible. So I have no doubt for all of the Joystick fans out there, he will come alive very shortly. But for now, we will go to the top floor, which is Empire's most favorite site, somewhere they should be very, very comfortable going.
I like this Frost pick as well. We've seen a lot of teams do these aggressive holds here in Trophy. That is where the shield will be used. However, as opposed to a lot of the Latin American and some APAC teams, Empire's not going for a full extension in the closet. Mostly just putting the emphasis around Okay, 2 Frost mats in mask is kind of strange. I feel like it would make sense if there was a mute jammer there, but like surely Oxygen are gonna spot those. Like this would have to be like a forced error from the Empire half.
Maybe that's what they're hoping for. Maybe they know that the rookies of Kino and Yoga and stuff like that, they've been going in ADS continuously as they enter the map. Think about Yoga when he was going over to the freezer door. He ran in and he was very confident. So you are right. It'll be the droners of the support players that are going to have to make sure they do their due diligence as they drone on in. They are in sneaky positions. You don't expect a Frost mat or 2 to be positioned in that way. And what a brilliant drone here from Foxay, nestled inside of that bomb chassis. That's going to be a brilliant one because they will surely get a freebie onto the shield over the top of the shelf. And guess what? Joystick will go down yet again. And he won't have an impact outside of his Banshees.
What a fantastic nade. And the drone works perfectly to net Oxygen. That opening, like you say, that's the Russian Cyborg gone down. And Oxygen are looking methodical. They're looking perfect. They have a line of sight breach on the closet wall. They have a line of sight deep into kids as Kino holds on. And Foxay looks like he's rotating over to Big Tower to put some pressure on the attic side. The only concern I have for OXG now is because they're so separated, if we start to see a couple of 1v1s tilt the way of Empire, this push that's set up nicely for Oxygen might not actually pan out so great.
We saw that during the rotate last round from Oxygen. Too many 1v1s meant the trades couldn't come through. As we have this white stairs hold from the Zofia, they still have utility to work with should they want to expel it, but with 60 full seconds left to play with, they don't have to rush this. They can take their time. Some grenades below wouldn't go afar either, and it's always to be there. He'll get droned out. And Vertical's the one that wants to get this control. It's not a C4, so they could leave it if they want to, but there are some vertical holes, so they need to be careful of it. And as this 1v1 surely ensues very shortly, the pinch will come in. That's the utility I was talking about. And surely he gets a second for the trouble as well, as Oxygen are making things work with all the time they have.
Such a good start here for Oxygen on this map. Their attack is clinical. It is perfect, and now a 1 versus 5 for Shep. It doesn't matter how many smoke babes he's got. It's not going to stop Oxygen from copping a flawless round. Fantastic start.
Brilliant job here from Oxygen. I think you put it right, and I think you got ratted out on the pre-desk as well, is that it will either be a very, very close matchup or Empire will run away with it. Now, that's painting a very dark picture for Oxygen as well. There's no option there for Oxygen to run away with it, but that would be a scenario, that's the best storyline we can give you for an upset. Oxygen are an underdog for a runaway story. It is very unlikely on paper that they take this and they run with it, both this map and the future maps in this best of 3. So if they do start to get a leg up, they're starting to run away with these rounds, you will know you're witnessing something that should not, at least on paper, be occurring. So I'm all for a sort of underdog story like that. But the biggest thing for me right now, I was looking through over towards some of the stats for Team Empire and then, of course, for Oxygen. And I sort of said to myself, well, how does Empire usually fare on the defense? On Oregon, usually really, really well. But we know, as you saw on the pre-desk, Oxygen is an attacking-sided team overall. So it's not surprising that they are doing quite well on their attack when they usually do quite well statistically.
Yeah, and just to keep talking about expectations and Oxygen, we saw them come through as the bottom seed from their group into the upper bracket, whereas Empire were the first seed from Group A. And Oxygen, while their first game at SI was a 7-0 over Parabellum, that was fantastic, they had a really rough second day, and you know, for the middle part of that group stage, they lost MIBR, NIP, and TSM. Of course, now we know that all those 3 teams went through the upper bracket, and all 3 have been incredibly strong here. Spoiler alert, NIP just beat BDS over on the A stream, so they're definitely a strong team. So maybe those losses aren't too much to read into here for Oxygen. And then on their final playday, they're 7-2 Giants, they're 7-0'd Makers, and they won 8-7 over Space Station as well. So in the grand scheme of things, Oxygen actually had a pretty amazing group stage, the only team to find 2 7-0s, but they are a little bit hit and miss just because of the drastic differences in those score lines. So when we do look at Oxygen now, the reason we come in with lower expectations is because Empire was so dominant in Group 1. Oh, wow, hello, that is a massive impact trick. Is that every single Tara's pellet gone?
That is everything done and dusted. I'm so sorry to cut off your perfect monologue there, because I was just going to follow it with saying Oxygen is one of my favorite NAL teams in the world. And I am just mind blown that Kino decided to place them all rather than cook one first and then place the rest after. That is a rookie mistake. And that's going to cut them huge, as they now don't have an entry point. They don't have a line of sight. And this will come down to them hitting shots, and hitting shots he does. A bit of redemption story there, but that is a dangerous one. And uh-oh, Joystick's out again. Good shot from Vertical. He'll get his revenge, as he's been falling early each round. And Oxygen have been really good with the time here. We know they're an attacking-sided team, so they usually do well with it. But that was a big boo-boo.
That said, at the end of the engagement, Oxygen have the numbers advantage 4 versus 3. Laxing and Vertical together can pinch always downstairs, leaving just 2 players on the bomb site. So all things considered, no breach anywhere in terms of the hard breach on the kids wall from Big Window or the games wall. That doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Oxygen are quite safe here. They've got some great map control as Vertical takes the top of White Stairs. Drones onto the site, pick downstairs, and honestly, it turns out that impact trick means nada as Oxygen find themselves in a 4 versus 2. Or Shepherd almost loses his head. A gas babe to go over the top. And Scyther, where was that? He found the angle, but the plan's still going down. Kino should be able to make this work. No, he doesn't. He pulls off the plant. He's going to find the pick, though, onto Scyther. Shepherd to hold. 1v3. Kino's going to go deep and finds that final kill with the Bearing 9. And that is Oxygen once again. A big showing and 3-1 on the scoreline.
Seriously incredible stuff here from Oxygen. I can't believe that when they get to the site and they've already encircled it, I'm talking players are on white, players are on double window, ready to go. Shields have been destroyed. That player from underneath inside of that security area is dispatched off. They've still got almost a whole minute to work with. That time conservation from Oxygen is their biggest strength. They get in fast, their pre-placed drones are very clearly set, and they know what they need to do. This is why, and we cannot understate it enough, most teams in the world are a defensive-sided team overall on maps. Oxygen are coming into the Invitational being one of the only teams to have a seriously high attacking ratio compared to their defensive. I was looking at Oxygen on Oregon specifically over the past, how many games have I sampled here? About 6 or 7 of them as a whole, and I was thinking to myself, well, does this also extend to Oregon? Is this something we usually see from Oxygen on Oregon as a whole? And I'm going to let you know here right now, James, they've been hitting about an exact 50-50 on what they win on attack and what they win on defense. They win almost exactly the same amount. I think it's maybe a 2% difference. That's it. So they are seriously a well-balanced team on Oregon.
Which bodes well considering the scoreline at the moment. Empire really need to get a couple more rounds in here. Best they can hope for is a 3-3 defense. To be honest, Jess, that doesn't seem like a great scoreline for me, especially considering we expected a lot out of Empire. I'd say 3-3 is pretty minimum for a defense half. So no, whatever way you cut this, Oxygen have had an amazing start. They've already exceeded par for the course. Once again, starting an early map control thanks to those pre-placed drones that you mentioned. The X factor we do have this time around is Oxygen on the Ying through Vertical. Now, Vertical himself has not had the greatest SI so far, but has been overall the star player for Oxygen throughout NAL Stage 1. And one of the leading factors as to why they managed to get first place. He's going to have to keep stepping it up here, especially on such a pivotal execution operator.
Well, in a moment where I thought Oxygen couldn't take this map control any quicker, they seem to be making it just a touch faster every single round. The big thing for me was when they tried to do that blue push, they didn't really leave enough utility and time to be able to dispatch of it. They tried to send these players 1v1, and they were too thinly spread out across the map to be able to trade anything. Maybe that is the biggest weakness, if Oxygen has one on attack, is being unable to trade players who send themselves on these solo missions throughout the mid and late round. Yoga's been one of them, but he hasn't really been missing, and when he does, it does tend to be in the late round. And now they're going to stick to this front take, but with the Ying in hand rather than a Yana, this could play really well. Cook those ADSs, send a couple of Candelas in through the hallway and the closet in the rotate, and Kino's going to confirm that there is ADSs. They'll cook it, they'll get it ready, and surely they start sending out those Candelas.
A matter of time before it happens. Fox 8 pushing Freezer, has Yoga to support. The util comes out. Where is the execute? Vertical, we're looking at him. We're waiting for him to put down those Candelas, as this is a slow and steady push. Oxygen waiting for that peak, waiting for that pick. Vertical equips the Candelas. Out they go. First one caught by an ADS. That ADS burned. Second Candela cooked out, but Vertical shut down. The trade comes through from Kino as he starts to go deep. No, he plays a shallow plan. And Empire, do they have information? Kino forced off the plan as he pulls back, but what a shot there from Joystick. It is all on Fox A right now. So much util still, and the Russian Cyborg locks out the final kills. Empire hold down their basement defense.
There you go. That's the power of the Elder in the hands of Joystick. And do you remember when he used to bring the Spud gun on Oregon specifically back in, what was it, Stage 2 of 2020 season? I mean, it was incredible the kinds of things that he was doing with that. And he was doing a lot of soft breach with it. He's placing his Evil Eyes and he was still getting kills. So doesn't matter what primary weapon he holds, he seems to dominate the Maestro role specifically on the downstairs, and he's been doing so for about a year now. So not a surprise to see him on that, but good to see that he's now entered the scoreboard, entered the fray a little bit, and I guess ending this half on a 3-3, you're right, it really doesn't reign superior. Not for the kind of hyping up that we've been giving the audience about Empire. It makes Oxygen definitely seem far superior to them. But again, as they move over to kitchen and dining, They'll see whether or not they can make this work. And given that there are teams that only go kitchen or dining or only go kitchen and meeting, be interesting to see as I scroll down to my stats here. Oh, am I on the right team? Oh, James, this is an interesting one. They almost always go meeting and kitchen. They almost never go dining and kitchen. I wonder what they've got up their sleeves here.
It's funny because looking at this operator lineup, looking at the vague setup here from Empire, I'm not seeing anything that's reinventing the wheel. This is not an unusual setup. This is fairly typical. I guess a little bit modern. I think that maybe Joystick is going for a Showers Halt here with the impacts to impact Trick X Kairos on the wall. It looks like that's the idea at the minute, but not going to be that effective against a Hibana. Honestly, like, I feel like I'm still kind of stuck in 2020 with this bomb site. Teams haven't really figured out how to attack it. And okay, well, throw everything out of the window along with the kitchen sink if Kino, the hard breacher, can go down first up thanks to Dan.
That is such a huge pick again. It's like when they impact tricked all of those X-Kairos on the closet wall. This time, they get a body with it and the X-Kairos. Quick pick from Joystick, won't net a kill. But as they drone out his position here, they are stuck for what they can do. They can get the Maverick Torch on the wall and try and provide a line of sight. But that puts you in a heck of a lot of danger. And with these drones starting to encircle Empire now, it's up to Oxygen. How do they want to deal with this? Maybe they could overwhelm him, but with the crossfire from Dan and the shots coming out, it looks like that was not the answer. They needed that hard breach to open up lines of sight. They didn't get it, and now their bodies will lay cold on the floor as they are rethinking exactly what they're going to do for this round.
Dan, the man, is hungry. Vertical. He needs to step up here in the 2 versus 5. Oxygen don't have a lot to work with. Drone goes on out. Vertical still has 2 in play, but Laxing has nothing. Couple still in the field. That default camera taken out now. Vertical knows he has some ground to take. The Showers is in the way of Oxygen. 2 players left for them, though, and they'll have to set up for an execute. But Jess, with Empire not really giving them anything, this is going to be very difficult. Even should Oxygen get this plant down, a retake is so viable here for Empire.
No need to overstep your mark when you have a 3-man advantage here. Oxygen is hoping that they give them something, but it's very, very unlikely. You can see Joystick's wrapped all the way around, through meeting, back around into kitchen. And as they start shooting these drones, no matter where they confirm them, they're going to have to take this as a duo here. They have to team engage these players. A little bit of a peek here, and Vertical's hoping that he'll be able to catch the head of the dock. Yes, he does. That's a beautiful shot there. Laxing gets one. Oh, where's this numbers advantage going, James? I was just complimenting them for being able to play passive here, but it's seeming like that is getting lost in translation.
Oxygen now rotate over. They want to go for a table plant. They spot out the black eye, need to take that down, so there's no advantage in terms of the information for Empire. And here comes the execute. But that's the denial from Joystick. A massive pick, safe behind the deployable shield as Vertical goes in, finds one. Looking for the trade now is Shepard. And Empire tie up their half, 3 rounds apiece.
It was a bit of a scary end to that round. The last 30 seconds were rather dire for Empire as they started throwing bodies at 2 very capable players. That does end the half, and, well, it did end like you expected, a 3-3, but doesn't really give me full confidence in Empire just yet. It seems like they've been warming into the match, and we said this about BDS multiple times throughout the EUL Stage 1 of this year. And of course, throughout some of the group stages as well, is that sometimes even a Lems would say it would take them a while to warm up into a match. I'm wondering whether or not that's happening to Empire here, or whether Oxygen are just really ripping them apart on the attack. They've had a pretty damn good win percentage on their attack overall, so I'm not surprised. This is where Oxygen will be tested, though. They don't usually perform as well on their defense, but they've got a pretty good 50-50 rate on this map, so we might be surprised.
What can we expect here out of Oxygen? That advantage 3-1 that they had is slowly slipping away. And as they turn onto their defense, we see quite a significantly different interpretation of this bomb site with far more deployable shields. In fact, Goyo brings 2, Smoke brings 1, Ella brings 1. That's a crazy number of deployable shields, especially considering Oxygen banned out that Ash, which is 3 explosives. We're really looking at Empire having those 2 nades from Maverick, 2 more from Sledge, and then the 2 explosives from Zafir. That is literally the only util that can clear out those 6 pieces to deal with 4 shields. So Empire need to make sure they don't have a lot of redundancy there. They need to make sure they're effective and efficient.
Well, surprisingly enough, all of those ADSs are over towards that laundry rotate. None of them will persist over towards elbow, and that's where you would usually expect them to be, considering I believe there's a player sitting right behind the Go-Go shield out of all the shields in elbow, and if that explodes in your face, well, that's a painful day. Foxay will be the one to stand here. And that's a very interesting setup. They clearly understand that Team Empire are likely to push front, or they're likely to be tossing a lot of their utility through the freezer line of sight, maybe, to get rid of that shield. I'm not sure what they're expecting here, but whatever it is, this is a clear counter to how they expect Empire to be pushing this one.
No contest whatsoever as of yet. I think Oxygen are really leaning into the late game of having these advantages behind these deployable shields. Just you look at not only all those 4 deployable shields, but also the 3 Banshees from the Malusi. Like, you do some simple maths here. Empire do not have enough explosives to clear out all of the bulletproof utility that Oxygen have brought. So they have to get a bit creative. They have Smokes on joystick to work with. You've talked about how powerful he is on the Jackal. Nice usage there of the X-Karos to somewhat flush out Kino from that bricks position, but still, I'm pretty confident in Oxygen setups. I really like the strat that they have formed. I really like the mental idea. And those 3 ADSs are chewing up those flashbangs, but it doesn't matter because Empire played that perfectly. A good drone, and out comes the utility. 2 of those shields are down.
That is such a brilliant use of their utility. You're so right. And they were able to get 2 of the shields that were going to be the first problem for their ingress should they push through the front. Not sure why they were so focused on pushing through and getting rid of those shields when it looks like an entire rotation has occurred towards the back. And with less than 60 seconds left, last time Oxygen tried this, it was a big, big issue. They didn't have enough time. They didn't have enough utility. And Foxay has already picked up his shield, I believe, or replaced it. So it's not going to be an elbow for him to use. This is just going to come down to frags.
There's the opening pick. Foxay. Hello, C4 goes out. Doesn't find anything. Oxygen still sitting safely, and the Shepherd's nade somehow gets Foxay. But he's left on his lonesome. 1 versus 3, and time whittled away. Empire couldn't find much. Shepherd's made it a 1v2, but doesn't check Harry Potter. Checks up the stairs. That's not where Harry Potter lives. And Vertical punishes him for not being a fan of one of our most beloved teenage books.
Well, that's where the magic happens for Oxygen, is that bringing that momentum from the first half of doing really quite well on their attack onto their second half. That's something that I truly think is hard to do from one half to the other, especially when you're a one-sided team. And I'm not saying that Oxygen is always an attacking-sided team, but overwhelmingly they tend to do quite well on it. I do think that that is a difficult thing to come over, reset yourself, go onto your defense, and then show that you can also do so on a more passive-aggressive basis rather than an aggressive one. And I think they've really shown us here that this is their map pick for a reason. They are prepared. And those 3 ADSs, of which clearly Team Empire wanted to get rid of, that showed me they knew exactly where the utility would come from Empire. So I do think Oxygen are very prepared.
Yeah, the funny thing is I do find it a bit interesting that Empire spent all that effort and util clearing out the shields on the front side towards Freezer and Laundry, right? And then Empire suddenly go for a blue push. It's like, what? Like, come on, you just invested all this time and effort onto pushing this one side, and then you completely rotate, ignore that. I feel like maybe some commitment there would have helped out Empire.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that part of that round was won in the operator select and the operator veto phase. I think that I do want to give Oxygen some credit, banning that Ash and then running, a lot of bulletproof utility, 7 pieces. That is really smart. But Empire definitely could have played around it better.
We'll see whether or not Empire have what it takes to get their first attacking round on this second half. They'll move over and do pretty much exactly the same kind of switch that we saw from Oxygen. They like to go through small tower or across, make sure they get a bit of control, and then also take a bit of that kitchen, maybe dining control, make sure there's no C4s or anybody likely to run up behind them on the white stairs should they put some aggression there. A lot of drones coming out from these players, and I don't want to say that necessarily Oxygen has the more superior pre-placed drones, but it's very clear that Oxygen getting in the first 20 seconds shows how good their droning has been, which has usually been an uncommon phrase when you link it to North America as a whole. But as the past year or two has gone on with the North American region, their intel gathering has been very, very good. That's why we're seeing such a really strong attack from Oxygen, and Empire yet to replicate that just yet as they open up Attic, get their default lines of sight and crouch hole in. Now they're gonna have to deal with more and more shields again.
I'm loving this Goyo play here from Oxygen, especially not just paired with the smoke, the shield, but also the Malusi. I like the way that drone was thrown through the mute jammer, but of course it was shot anyway, so it didn't matter. And that's a nice nade. No ADS to protect. Curious decision. I wonder where those ADSs must be stacked. Then it looks like two. No, that's a. Is that a Banshee or an ADS? I can't tell on my feed. The blue light is all I can see. There's one top white stairs in Canadian's favorite spot. There's one on the big window, and I think that must be.
Has to be one. Yeah.
I can't tell from my feed.
Well, they do get one shield, and with 60 seconds left, there's still multiple still standing. I heard another grenade pop out, but no shield fall as a result. And as they're trying to make it rain around the Oxygen players, they're being starved for that said Oxygen. As they slowly enclose, it's still a 5v5, only a little bit of damage done to Vertical. And as he hears this grenade rip, he might be able to challenge on. But Dan is the only one over towards Attic to get that pinch push, so it's very important he wins this engagement.
And these mute jammers are just making it so hard here for Dan as he decides to dry peek this, but he finds the shot anyway, almost gets a second. So keen here with the ARX as Empire are shaping up for a push. 20 seconds left on the clock, and this is all happening all here right now. Dan's found another one as Joystick shoots up that C4, keeps himself alive a little bit longer. He goes deep into the side. Yoga taken down. Empire have exploded, but Oxygen are holding on. Foxay in pit. He's the last one left. He's made this a 1 versus 2. Pushing through the smoke. Can he deny the plant? He rounds the corner, but Joystick for the cover keeps Empire in this game, and they take back this even Steven 4-4 round counts.
We love a close game, James. This has been absolutely brilliant, especially since we got in the second half where I said Oxygen would be mostly tested. You saw the mute's body there at the end. They put him to bed in the bottom bunk as well. And while we're on the topic, do you prefer the top bunk or the bottom bunk, James? Because I'm a top bunk kind of gal. I like to have the view from the top all the way over. Or did you never have a bunk bed growing up?
I actually, at one point, I had a bunk bed on top of a desk. So it was like the desk below and the bunk bed on
Gucci.
top. It was cool until I became 6'3" and I would bump my head
tall.
even just trying to sit up in bed on the roof of the ceiling. So that was not fun. At that point, I was like, all right. Also, being quite a long boy makes things difficult when you're in a single bed. So, yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. I just needed to know.
All the viewers were very interested by that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Nevertheless, it's just a bit of fun as we're back and forth in this matchup between Empire and Oxygen. Still unknown as to who is going to take this map. If you're curious, this was a map pick for Oxygen. So it is a map that they're hoping to walk away with comfortably, because as we get on throughout this series, it is very likely that not only will Team Empire warm up, they do tend to take a little bit to get into some of their matches, but they will be on a map that they themselves have picked and therefore seemingly are going to be more comfortable on. And did you see what Vertical did just there? It was very minor and the viewers might not have picked it up. But what Vertical did was got on the default cam, saw where the players spawned, and then replaced the ADSs as to where the spawn occurred from those particular players to work out where the push would be coming from. That is intensely smart. That is adaptability and flexibility there from Oxygen, and I love to see it.
The little things, isn't it? We see the very best teams in the world. They do so much, and every single move is calculated. But Empire, their execution was just too much better. in that previous round. His joystick looking to push up the white stairs again, laying down the groundwork of this roam clear below the bomb site to make sure that he has free reign to do so. As he checks the kitchen now, as we see two players from Empire, Dan and Shepard, to take control of tower. Dan keeping an eye on that flank as Shepard moves on in. He's going to be making short work of this attic wall, just like we saw last time, Jess. Now, my question is, Empire, they've just attacked this bomb site. Oxygen lost it. What's Oxygen going to do differently this time?
I mean, realistically, they took a couple of gunfights there that were not going to bode too well for them. They weren't in a win condition for them, and I think that's something that they will have learnt this time, is that when the site is opening up around you and you're starting to get pinched, I mean, that's when you need to keep your calmness. You don't need to try and take engagements that would be a little bit too difficult, and I think that's what Empire were hoping to push out of Oxygen. They did. They made them take gunfights that put Oxygen at a disadvantage. And that's all that came down to there. They had a bit of time on their hands as well, as Oxygen showed us in the first half how well time can bode when you're able to circle the site.
A bomb has been located.
Still no ADS is protecting the shield that was in attic, and of course that did mean that it was so easy for Empire to clear it. Good information gathering by the Yana Gemini as Vertical takes that down, and Shepard also cutting off a nice position. Kino is pushed all the way back as Scyther starts to make short work of this kid's bedroom floor, and does not realize that Kino is sitting on top of that little cabinet. Kino takes refuge on top of the reinforced hatch, but this vertical pressure coming through from Empire is a really nice way of clearing out this position. But as of yet, Empire have done well to dodge it.
Oh, this could be a brilliant nade. They know he's there. It's the only safe spot to sit, but with a double ADS on the wall and it bounces off the shelf, or rather the bunk bed. He is in complete safety here. They're wasting so much time on him, but look at all these smokes, whether it's the smoke of the attack or the smoke babes of the defense. They want to get this plant down, and they've got huge numbers advantage. They're being choked out now, James, and with 5 seconds left, they have to get the plant down. Always is almost done. Stop it now! It's an oxygen round! And out of nowhere, in a complete man disadvantage for Oxygen, all it took was a peek through the rotate, stopping Always, getting the plant off. And that round was so incredibly close as Empire leaves it 3 seconds too late.
Oh my God, Vertical. I've ragged on him a little bit this series so far, but man, he comes through when it matters. What was that, a 2v4? And Vertical comes through and saves the game and saves that round for Oxygen, retaking the lead as well for the North Americans. A massive, massive moment there for Vertical. And on the back of that, Oxygen take a tactical timeout.
Even after you get a round win, you want to make sure you're putting yourself in the best stead for what could possibly be the last 2 rounds of this matchup. They are 1 round away from match point. They're also 1 round buffer from Empire and even Steven, as you would call it, James. And my biggest question from that round was not what Oxygen was doing, not them winning, losing their ones again. It was, why did Always plant in such a precarious position? He had the whole shelving of that bunk bed to hide behind. He could have gone even deeper if he wanted to. He could have played corner where there was a player covering. I mean, a lot of questions there, and maybe it came down to time. Maybe the team was saying, play it, and he just held F where he was standing. Whatever the question or whatever the answer might be to that one, Empire are going to be feeling worse for wear, but they themselves get a little bit of a timeout now as well to talk through what's been going wrong for them on the attack after losing that one.
Yeah, for me, the way that the meta has evolved for attacking that Dorm's bomb site is really interesting, because it used to be very much directional. You would either take master in through closet to execute games with a little bit of pressure from attic, or you would take like a big window and up white stairs. And maybe you would have some elements elsewhere, but it seems like these days, the way a lot of teams attack that Dorm's bomb site is just everywhere, like a little bit everywhere all at once. That's exactly what Empire did. A player up white stairs, a player attic, a player trophy, a player on big window. It was just so crazy. And I think that what fell apart then is because Empire were quite spread out, as soon as Shepard went down to Vertical, Shepard was the Maverick who was trying to cover that planter as soon as he was taken out. there was no one to cover that. There was no one protecting the poor planter just sitting there holding F. And of course, that meant that it was really just a 1v1 for vertical. All he had to do was land that shot onto the planter. Empire could not control it. And as a result, this is kind of a turning of the tide here, Jess, as Oxygen have retaken the lead. After a strong 3-3 attack, they've now found 2 defenses and can head back down to Laundry, which they got successfully in their opening round of this half.
Oh, there's a bit of a roam possibility there from Yoga. They've opened up that attic wall for a rotate, and the biggest thing that has changed here for Empire is they're bringing the Ying. Now, a problem for them, at least in the mid to late round, is we don't really know where they want to execute from when they're pushing bottom floor. They seemingly get rid of shields on the front, rotate to the back. That successful one over throughout the front stairs and then through Freezer. That was an impressive one, but whether or not they repeat that or not, they don't want to be predictable. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that they need to make sure that they are pushing themselves into a win condition, and that win condition will be them having enough time to deal with the utility, be able to, of course, deal with the plant, which they're not seemingly ever getting down. They're not in a position to ever get a plant completely finished. And that's something they need to change here. And I can't even work it out now with their silhouettes where the push is going to come from. It just seems that they're trying to suss out, open everything up, and then choose mid to late round.
One thing I do like, though, for Empire with this attack is the way they've modified their lineup compared to the start. Now, of course, remember that very first round, they had, 6 explosives, I believe it was, to 7 things that needed to be exploded, just to put it for Oxygen. And the way that Empire have changed things up, they've got joystick off the Jackal, which I think is good. It might be a comfort pick for him, but they really do not need that extra roam clear. I don't think they need the smokes either. So they now have that Zafir stayed in the lineup, and Dan has brought the Yana, which is an extra 3 explosives. The X factor, though, is Scyther on this Ying. And I'm really curious as to how effective he can be with this execute.
Well, Foxay will give up elbow, and that's about half the round that he decided to stay in there. No one to push him just yet, but he might be reinforcing it off a little bit too early, as Empire have seemingly not made the decision as to where they want to push. Always is on the E-box hatch, and so is Scyther with those Candelas you were just referencing. So it looks like most of the players are aiming towards the back here. Kino will be that first line of defense if they do choose to go through blue, but it does look maybe a back stairs, a hatch drop. Shepard's finally rotating over, and Kino with a shotgun close range could be seriously dangerous. He'll swing onto him. He wants the engagement. He knows he's alone for now. And as Shepard stands up, he'll get what he's asking for.
There's the opening pick, of course. Kino getting nice and aggressive here. Come the Candelas for Scyther. Caught out by the Yellow Mine. Caught out by Foxer. And Empire on the back of that have made this work always. Standing outside blue bunker, the last one remaining. And Oxygen can sit back and relax, as always has absolutely no chance. And Oxygen have taken 3 rounds of their defense, and alongside that, match points.
Ooh, nice little shot there at the end with the Scorpion. Nevertheless, you are right. This is a scoreline I didn't predict in any way, shape or form. I did have a sneaky suspicion that given the results of Oxygen on the last day of groups, that they were really feeling their groove. They are the first place NAL team for a reason. They didn't just get there via luck. And so if we are to really say that North America is one of the best regions in the world, and we are now watching one of their best teams that they currently possess, then it's not beyond us to say that, yes, they seemingly are going to be putting out the results that we expect of a first place NAL team. Going up against Empire, who, okay, in their regular season have been showing some really poor results. They ended up 9th in stage 1, which is 1 away from dead last place. But they came into the group stages seemingly reignited, reinvigorated. And for Oxygen to take map 1, which is their map pick, I think you're right. I think this will end up being a really, really close series throughout this map and beyond.
Yeah, well, like I'd alluded to, and I think as Zenox mentioned in the pre-show, the way I saw this game before it all started at 0-0, I see either Empire take this in a convincing match if Oxygen don't show up like they did in the end of groups and played a little bit more like the start of groups. or it's a close game and Empire probably win it. Well, at the moment, it's shaping up to be an Oxygen win here on Oregon. Of course, we still have 2 maps to come. Clubhouse will be Empire's map pick, and we're definitely guaranteed to go there. Should we get all the distance, it will be Coastline as our decider. But right here on Oregon is where the fight is really going down. Oxygen really demonstrating their power here on Oregon. Really impressive the way that they've managed to hold on to this defense. And honestly, it just hasn't been a great day for EU overall, Jess. We might have held this in Paris, but the French lost their opening game to NIP, BDS falling despite everyone's predictions. And here it looks like Empire are perhaps damned for the same fate.
Well, if you look at Oxygen's current defensive setup, it is redundancy after redundancy after redundancy. And what I mean when I say that is look at all the vertical holes that they've got to help support the players who are roaming upstairs. Look at the pre-placed C4s and the Valkyrie can. That's a freebie. Hit it. Oh, good night.
So
Sleep
good.
tight. Always. You'll always die if you get a C4 under your feet. And unfortunately for Empire right now, Oxygen, when I call that redundancy and they've got everything ready to go, it's a story that writes itself there, James. They cannot get in unless they deal with all of these different moving parts that Oxygen have set up.
Yeah, and for Empire now, that means they won't have a hard breach on the board, except for the Maverick, which of course is a little bit more risky to use. Not so great for those long lines of sight. Dan and Joystick together to pinch onto the kids' dorms. That's a great C4. Dan looking to get aggressive on the back of it. Lovely shot, threads the needle and takes down Vertical, but Joystick still cold on the grounds. And Dan looking for another, doesn't have information on Attic, uses the concussion to clear it out. Thinks it might be clear, but has to face check it anyway. And of course, there is a rotate in the back, so he's constantly going to be cautious of his flank. But Oxygen are just sitting tight on the bomb site. A player still in kids' dorms as well.
Do they know that they're about to get peaked? Surely they do. All right, there we go. Concussion confirms there's one more player upstairs. And Dan, yet again, he'll get a double for the trouble. And as he is swapping back and forward over to Attic, over to dorms, he's trying to protect the players who are getting those verticals. And oh no! We were talking about pre-placed C4s, but those pre-placed Capcan traps, they'll get you, and get you they do, as Empire are falling to so many different utility pieces, whether it's those traps, those C4s, etc. And Joystick, he just wants in on site. He's sick of dealing with the top floor. And now it's going to be up to these 3 players. A missed opportunity, but finally he capitalizes. And with about 15 seconds left, it is up to Laxing and Kino, who are in really good stead.
Kino's been such a key player as he finds Joystick. Shepard in the 1 versus 2 for the map. Oxygen have looked so good, and they're going to hold on here on their map pick. Kino taken down, but the Banshee does not let Shepard through. Oxygen take their map pick of Oregon.
An unexpected scoreline here for the people who thought that Team Empire would absolutely rock the upper bracket. Looks like we will have to flip the script here for the viewers, as Oxygen will take their map pick here on Oregon. It's a best of 3 though, so for all the European and CIS fans out there, do not worry. There's still more opportunity here for Empire to redeem themselves, but for now, this is the Oxygen story being written right in front of our eyes. And I have to say it here, because there were no rehosts and that scoreboard at the end was legitimate. There was not a single player on the side of Oxygen that didn't have a helping hand, at least in the kill department. As we get that match summary later on, I guarantee you there'll be a lot more story to be told.
Well-deserved MVP for Kino, second from the left, just sitting there chilling out. He's Rookie of the Year so far, and he's had a fantastic showing here at the 6th Invitational. Let's toss it over to the analysts and see what they have to say.
It's the playoffs here really heating up for 6 Invitational. What a start for Oxygen Esports, knocking off Team Empire Guz in the first map here on Oregon. To our surprise, we very much felt as if Empire were the clear favorites coming into this. We weren't alone. Jess and Dev felt the same, Guz, but in the end, Oxygen, despite their shaky group stage, what a start to playoffs.
Yeah, really good signs here for Oxygen in map number 1. It was their map pick, so they'll be happy to get it out of the way, but they showed really good signs. Their attack was strong. We anticipated that, and they were able to, of course, close it out on the defense. Some really good rounds from a couple of players, a couple of standout players, but for the most part, it was a well-rounded performance by Oxygen. The stats reflect that. The ratings are quite consistent. No one really stepping up massively. They didn't need to. It was a team effort. In fact, 3 players on 8 kills, 2 on 7. Outside of that, the stats in terms of cost, KPR, survival rate, etc., all very consistent for all of these players. So a really good performance for Oxygen and some good signs for the best of 3.
And I mentioned earlier in the pre-match discussion, you know, we looked at the stats and the numbers, and Oxygen's attack was certainly something I thought was going to be pivotal. And we saw that very early on into Oregon. They won Dorms twice. They also won Basement to open it up. So they had a 3-1 start, actually, on their attack. And that pretty much set them up for the rest of the match. That first half, I think Dev pointed out that a 3-3 half was not ideal for Empire, and it ended up being that way in the second half. The defense from Oxygen way too strong, and that proved to be the difference maker. It was all done in the first half by their attack, in my opinion. And honestly, from Empire, maybe it's just the day for it, guys. The upsets continued to trickle through. We've already seen BDS lose. Team Liquid has lost. Maybe Empire's next.
Ooh, yeah, big play in there in the replay package as well from Vertical. Of all the rounds, I guess that one was probably the most notable. Vertical able to deny the plant, Empire left lacking a questionable plant spot, questionable amount of cover, and he was able to capitalize. And I think that was really the story for Oxygen, capitalizing at the opportunities that were presented towards them. I mean, teams can make mistakes all the time, but if you're not actually capitalizing upon those, you're not going to convert that into round wins. So again, good signs for Oxygen.
And good signs as well for basically both teams here. A little bit of a cheeky stat, but of the 11 rounds, 9 times the opening pick converted into a round win. Only twice it didn't, which was actually both times through Oxygen, who got the opening picks but couldn't convert the round wins. Ultimately, though, really good Oregon in the end from Oxygen Esports, guys. But how do you see it now as a series as a whole? Of course, the beauty of the best of 3, Empire, not out of it yet. They are going to get the opportunity over on Clubhouse.
Clubhouse going to be quite a peculiar one, I guess, between those two, because for the most part, it's a strong map for both of them, or at least they've shown good signs in their regional leagues. Empire and EUL, of course, putting up some pretty good results. 9-3 win-loss record across both the EUL and the Russian Major League. Oxygen as well have not lost on Clubhouse so far in the early stages of this year. So yeah, shaping up to be an interesting one. Again, the metas aren't necessarily going to translate, and you would need to back Empire in. I think that would be the most common sense approach, considering that it was their map pick. So yeah, maybe that trend will continue, but yeah, who knows? 6 Invitation has been wild. The casters were touching on it a few times all across the board. There's already been some absolutely wild results, and I do not want to count Oxygen out of this one.
No, certainly not. And I think it also is good to say, you know, the earlier matchup that we had on the B stream, Liquid, they lost their map pick on Chalet and then, of course, went on to lose anyway. So, I mean, how much sort of discussion do you really put into these map picks? I think all the teams, when you're in the final 16 globally that have made it to the playoffs for SI, I think every team's competent on pretty much just about every map. And while there might be some maps that they're obviously a bit better on, that's, I don't think, going to be too much of a difference. Empire, though, in Clubhouse, they were pretty good on it over in the group stage. It will be a very difficult task for Oxygen, but the way they were playing on Oregon, you play like that again, guys, and you have to give them every hope in hell.
Yeah, and heading into this map, one operator in particular that I really want to touch on, and something that we didn't really have an opportunity to in the pre-show, is Jackal. We saw it come out in map number 1 on Oregon for Empire, and it's an operator that they have been playing quite a bit here at 6 Invitational. It was banned against them 3 times, and for the most part, when they did have the opportunity to play it, they brought it to the table. A 61% pick rate for Empire and a 48% win rate at that, which is probably pretty good considering that the attack win rate across the board has not been amazing in this tournament. On the other side, Oxygen haven't been bringing the Jackal near as much, an 8% play rate. And it's actually been pretty bad against them. 7 rounds that Jackal got played against Oxygen, and it was a 57% win rate. So maybe not as strong on the defense there for Oxygen as we would like, but again, Oxygen, I guess, overall haven't been a strong defensive team, but just like to keep an eye on. If the Jackal gets brought out, which it already has been on this map by Empire, especially from Joystick, expect a little bit of chaos.
Well, I know you love your stats, guys, as you just mentioned. So let's look at the match summary statistics from this matchup of Oregon between these two teams. And it's, of course, going to favor Oxygen. They're looking great. Great on the KDs. Also pretty decent on the entries when it comes to Foxay, Kino, and Laxing, +1 apiece. Not ideal for Yoga and Vertical, -2, but obviously as a team, pretty decent overall. The other thing as well is you look at Empire's stats, especially the KDAs, guys, they're not even that far out of it. The fact that they lost 7-4, the stats don't really tell the full story here when it comes to the round differences.
Yeah, I guess often is the case in Siege. Stats don't mean everything, and there's only a limited amount of categories that we can sort of track at the moment. There's so many different aspects to Siege that just do not have a statistical number to them, and it can be difficult to get a bit of a read on just how strong a team is performing in the limited amount of time that we have to watch their games and break them down just at surface level. So I think just, again, looking at the stats, again, for Oxygen, consistent across the board. Empire may be lacking a little bit in the tail end there, always struggling to get himself in the game. But the positive sign for Empire for me is that both Dan and Joystick, whilst not going absolutely nuclear, were still at the top of the ratings, top of the KDs. For Empire, those are the two players we're expecting to step up, and I can only assume that naturally their performance will be heightened on their map pick of Club.
Especially Dan on the entry there, 3-1 for a +2. In terms of cost performance, Foxay with a 91% leading the way for all players in both teams there on Oregon. Of course, the map pick for Oxygen, their attack was the main difference in the end. These guys, of course, now move forward to Clubhouse. We'll move some of our discussion towards Clubhouse as well, guys. And you know, if there was maybe a bit of debate over Oregon, it was the map pick for Oxygen, etc., yada, yada, yada. Over on Clubhouse, this is the map pick for Empire. A team that, of course, went 8-1 in the group stage, was utterly dominant. They, you know, took down BDS on Clubhouse in that massive 15-round blockbuster. They definitely still come into this as clear favorites, despite the loss on Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to assume so. There's a reason, obviously, that Empire are happy to go to this map, and we have seen it a little bit from them. At the 6th Invitational, they played it twice, 100% win rate, so they've won it on both occasions, so some decent form here. I would have to assume that on the flip side, though, Oxygen, if they've done their research right, would probably have been anticipating this map either way, so both teams will be well equipped, well prepared, heading into this one, which, I mean, this probably sets it up for the third map. I know I'm getting a little bit far ahead of myself here, and you know, anything is possible at the 6th Invitational, but I do believe that Empire at the end of the day will be better equipped on this matchup, particularly again if Dan and Joystick can elevate themselves to yet another level. Oxygen could struggle in shutting those two down.
Yeah, and look, without going too deep into the third map, it is Coastline, and it is a stark difference between the first two maps being Oregon and Clubhouse. Very structured, very methodical in the approaches to those sites. It's a big difference. You do have to then wonder which team's going to come out on top, and I think actually looking at the playstyle of Oxygen, from what we saw in Oregon, I think they would probably translate at the moment a little bit better over to Coastline. But hey, who's to say that after a Clubhouse performance, maybe from Empire, if it's an emphatic victory, certainly then that all changes again, because they would then be the team taking momentum into Coastline. So I think you could easily sit back and say, well, if Empire can win this, it's 1-1, you go to Coastline, you've got then momentum going into Coastline, suddenly then Empire probably favored. So there's a lot that can change. For Oxygen, the main thing, guys, is they've got series point from here on out. You win Clubhouse, you move forward in the bracket, and you very much cement today being day one of the playoffs as one of the biggest upset days in Siege history on the entire day out of all of the matches being played.
Yep, serious point is huge for Oxygen, and keep in mind that they are really looking to carry across the momentum that they established in NAL of Stage 1. It was a great stage for them. On the flip side, it was a struggle for Empire, who are looking to, I guess, bounce back in the LAN environment. But touching on Oxygen once again, it really does start here in the first half of this second map, and it's going to be tough for them. They are starting on the defense, and whilst on most occasions we would say, oh, defense Club, like ease clap, let's go. Oxygen have not been the strongest team on the defense. We have been talking about time and time again that their attacks are nutty. They've got some insane stats on their attacks. They showed it to us on their map pick of Oregon, and they will need to do the same once again here in the first half of Club.
Yeah, and Clubhouse is another map that's similar to Oregon, where you probably expect the defending teams to perform better overall. Maybe not as vigorous as Oregon to a degree, but as you mentioned, I think that's right now what's separating these two teams. You know, we spoke about it in the pre-match and in the pre-show, that it was sort of like the Russian wall versus Oxygen's attacking prowess. And Oxygen's attacking prowess ended up defeating the wall and breaking through and being able to stop Empire's defense. If they do it again here on Clubhouse, which is, you know, kind of likely with what we've seen from Oxygen, depending on... let me have a quick look who's actually attacking first. So it looks like we are going to see Oxygen defending first, I think, actually, from what I'm making of this. If I'm wrong, let me know, guys. But it does look like...
Oxygen starting defense. Yep.
I kind of like that then for Empire, that they can get their attack out of the way first and then defend second.
Yeah, 100%. Like I was saying, I think it puts a little bit of pressure on Oxygen on their defense, which again, statistically hasn't been amazing, but stats don't mean everything, so I don't want to harp on it too much. But Oxygen, in theory, would have been more comfortable on the attack. But that's just the nature of the veto. Empire... I mean, funnily enough, Oxygen had the decision on side, right? So Empire picked Club and Oxygen elected to go on defense. Now, that's probably just more of a comfort pick more than anything, and they're not reading into the stats as much as we are. And you would assume that their mental's going to be strong enough that even in a scenario where they don't have the absolute strongest defense possible, that, you know, they bounce back. And like I said earlier, that's something that I think the North American teams have an advantage with heading into this tournament. They've been playing NAL on LAN for stage 1. That's a huge boost in being familiar with the build, I guess, the pressure, the environment, the trash talk, etc. And I guess so far in that first matchup, it did show off.
Certainly did. Oxygen 1-0 up in the series. That's us done. We are going to now throw it back over to Jess and Dev as they get into Clubhouse.
Thank you very much, Xenox. It is map number 2 here. Empire on the back foot. Not something we expected to be saying this morning, but OXG are putting up an amazing fight. Their playstyle has been very impressive, and Jess, going to Clubhouse will be a challenge for them, but I might be starting to flip-flop.
Oh, explain to me, because I felt like Clubhouse was going to be a Team Empire map regardless of who won the first map. I just felt that they are really strong on Clubhouse. So for me, I've been leaning towards Empire regardless. Where are you sitting on this, though?
Well, it's hard to say for sure who will take Clubhouse. Empire need this, though. They need to bounce back to be competitive, take it to map 3 and settle it on Coastline. As we head into the ban phase, look, I'll just answer that question you posed. For me, looking at Empire's results on this map, they've won it 10 out of the last 11 times they have played it, albeit a lot of those times have been against tier 3 teams in Russian Major League. And the times they have lost it have still been close, but, you know, 5-7 over to Na'Vi, 5-7 to Rogue, 5-7 to Vitality. These are losses that we cannot ignore. But for a long time, this has been a strong map for Empire, regardless.
Well, Oxygen getting rid of the Ashe again. They don't seem deterred by the fact that because Joystick can't play on the Ashe, well, of course, then he'll have to go onto the Jackal. But I am more leaning into the theory that's because they're bringing all of these different shields. They have so much destructibility that is required. And Ashe having those 3 Ashe charges to work with is huge. Valkyrie will go out as well. And of course, that is a pretty damn common ban, especially in the European region as a defensive ban. And so does Mirror. None of these bans outside of Ashe scream out unusual for me. The biggest thing I'll be looking for now is considering that we have, you know, the Thatcher ban, but the Maverick in play. Fox A has been a really good Maverick for the side of Oxygen, but because they're starting on defense, I think Kino wasn't sure which operator he wanted to pick to begin with. I think he wanted to possibly get a 6th pick in, so he just randomly picked whichever operator he could, and I'm almost certain Empire will know that that is going to be a 6th pick, but you know what? We have seen Tachanka in pro play before, and that was by Vitality, was it? On this exact map to deny a kitchen hatch drop plant. So it's not completely out of the story.
Yeah, stranger things have happened. But of course, it is a 6th pick over, and we see what is a fairly typical what people still like to call the SSG Roam, Mute, Mozzie, Vigil, Castle, almost as textbook as it gets in terms of an SSG Roam. The Malusi's there as well, just to slow down any site rush. That's the main weakness that people like to point out for a site like this, where you basically try and contest the entire map. You put a lot of your reinforcements off site, you put some wall denial there, and a lot of information denial, the Mute, the Mozzie, and the Vigil, to try and slow down that map take. Eventually, you'll fall back to the site, maybe in a 5v5, maybe in a 4v4. You just want to do a little bit of damage so that it makes it a bit more difficult for the attack. But what I will say is something that Guz alluded to in the pre-show, which is the fact that Joystick's got the Jackal. The Jackal is not only a great operator for Joystick, it's a bad operator to go when Oxygen go up against it. They have a low win rate against it. And also, Jackal's just a straight up hard counter to the information denial that we have, because of course Jackal doesn't get countered by the Vigil or the Mozzie.
Well, of course, this is a perfect setup against a team like Empire, who loves to do top-down takes. Think about how they usually play Clubhouse. They'll almost always clear top floor first. They will push it with every piece of utility they have. They do the same on Consulate. They do the same on every map that requires a clear. And that's why this particular strategy will play really well as a counter to Empire. Oh, Yoga, how you survived that is beyond me. And with his last breath of life there, he comes alive and takes and snuffs out the last breath from Dan. That was unbelievable, the way that he 180'd onto that one and was able to take the gunfight instead of running away. A lot of confidence from him there, but he is lit right up, but that's a beautiful opening pick here, as I believe Yoga might have been the opening death on the first map, so nice little bit of revenge there.
Great start here for Oxygen, as it looks like they may have all 5 players back on the bomb site now. Joystick should be able to quickly discern that by scanning out these footprints, as he does though there. I believe that was for Foxe, the Mozzie player. Going to take out this drone at this default cam at some point. There you go, mate. And Empire at this point should be fairly confident that this roam has been dissipated, and Joystick can easily check that by looking at these prints and scanning them, making sure that the last players are on the site.
You can also just look at the direction of the footsteps sometimes. You don't even have to waste a scan. You can just be like, yeah, that's in the direction of blue. There's no possible way that they could have run another way or up the stairs. And as I speak of this, with less than 60 seconds left, although it seemed like they were able to get them to float back to site in early time, even though they lost Dan, it did seem a little bit questionable because, well, they weren't able to trade that one off. And when you're in a numbers disadvantage on a site like this and you're trying to push kitchen hatch, you're trying to push dirt, and then you're trying to do a hatch drop for a plant, you need as much cover as you can get. So Empire, if they lose one more player, I don't see how the plant goes off without some very, very strong mechanical skill upon the entry.
Just 20 seconds left now for Empire as they do shape up for this kitchen plant. Shepard drops down, loses life to Kino. Kino finds a double, and here we go, Oxygen. Joystick going to push on through the rotate hole and deep into Arsenal. About to pick up that diffuser, but decides to go deep. It's just him left in a 1 versus whatever, doesn't matter. Oxygen, a strong opening round here on Club.
This is what I meant. You got to have so many different lines of sight covered. That's why you need almost every man available to you. And when he dropped the hatch, I mean, I know there was a smoke pop. I believe that was over to the rotate for the hallway. But who was covering that angle towards double stack? Who was covering towards AKs? Where was the dirt pressure if you want to try and get a push like that? I'm glad we're replaying this, because the fact that he committed to that as he backed on up, and in fact, he was actually running backwards throughout that spray as well. So that's very impressive mechanical skill here from the Oxygen boys. Each and every one of them in the last map managed to put almost exactly the same kills, between 7 and 8 kills apiece. So if it's not denying the execute onto site, it's them being able to put kills on the board as well. And that is a really nice holistic thing to say about a North American team who has been strong with intel, been strong with utility, and they've been strong with kills. That's a really nice, well-rounded team.
Yeah, honestly, I really hope Empire have got more in the tank than this, because they are not showing up right now. That was a very convincing round for Oxygen, not just in terms of the kills, but the big thing for me is Kino just sat in Armory at dummies and mowed down those players as they dropped the kitchen hatch. Empire didn't really have any response to that. It was kind of like close your eyes, drop the hatch, and hope that you don't die. That did not work whatsoever. Oxygen are really strong right now on the back of map number 1 going their way. And the first round of map number 2 starting strong for them. Of course, we should expect the defense to be favored here on Club. That's why Oxygen chose to start on the defense. But Empire, we've seen the fact that sometimes if they have a slow first half, that does come back to bite them in the backside. It's what we saw in Oregon.
Well, they won't have many rounds of buffer as Oxygen have been running away with the rounds when they get a bit of momentum behind them, so they need to be able to capitalize on this now. They're pushing CCTV, and the biggest thing about that for me, at the very least, when I was looking over the stats for Clubhouse throughout the group stages, is that CCTV actually, surprisingly, unlike the regular stages, had one of the highest defensive rates as a whole, which is very unusual. Throughout stage 1 in almost every region, it had one of the lowest defensive win rates, and now it's just seemingly flipped on its head. So this would technically, if we're referring to the group stages, be one of the strongest sites to hold in all of Clubhouse at the moment. Empire are going to have to show something special here, and they're not changing anything up from what they usually do in Clubhouse. They'll open up the right-hand side of the wall. They'll try and jump into the window next to Con and plant next to the stacks there once they have Con opened. And I think they'll just repeat that, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Very passive angle here for Dan. Must be worried about getting swung by Oxygen, so he plays so far back. Always just going ham on these walls, giving himself some mobility as he pushes from the construction side. It looks like the execute for Empire is to go for construction, not going for a garage take. I think that's a good move. So you can see that Mute Jammer stalling out these X-Kairos, but a nade should clear out that in a matter of seconds. 3 flashes through, here comes the nade. And gets the Mute Jammer.
They'll send another one over for good measure. Laxing, careful, buddy. And it looks like those X-Kairos will be the finishing touch to him as he'll lay his life trying to get out of the way. You said there's no need for Empire to take Garage. They want to avoid it. Well, that's because their default plant spot is at the window and they don't need to take Garage. And that's what I like about their very unique plant spot, is that it's been enabling them to completely give up having to take Garage. But here comes the flank, and guess who's watching it? Is that joystick on the drone? He knows he's there. You heard wrong, buddy, and you missed your shots, and all of a sudden Vertical, he's able to come up from behind, but with 30 seconds left, they're gonna have to deal with him very quickly, and he could just delay as much time as he wants.
Vertical's going to play very passive here. It's a risk, though. Empire have the numbers advantage should they just go straight to side. But, of course, Vertical knows about this window plan, so he starts to push on in. But it's not a planted window at all. It's a planted... I don't even see it, as Kino's not doing anything. Empire have made this plant go down right on the breach. And OXG have to retake in the 3 versus 4. Empire take post-plant positions. Yoga looks to get aggressive. Nice shot there onto Always, though. 3v3. For Oxygen, as they start to stick this, there needs to be some plant denial. Yoga can just hold on. Cyther has to deny it. He does! Vertical, it's a 1v2 for the man as he rounds the corner, makes it a 1v1. On to Dan now, the last player to hold on. And he's gonna fake it. 3 ticks as Dan shut down. Vertical, I think he just has time. We hold a bated breath. Vertical, he does it!
No.
The defenders win! And that is a clutch from Oxygen.
I cannot believe what just went on in front of our eyes, James. I believe at the end of that, it was 0.34 of a second left. Now, I could be wrong. Mind you, it's going at record time across my screen as I'm attempting to take stock at exactly what Vertical just achieved. But my goodness, that round was full of surprises from start to end there. Looked like Empire were able to take a really good crossfire position. That X-Cairo kill, that'll stick with me for a while. That must be the first one ever in 6 Invitational history, surely. But nevertheless, really good retake there. Started by Yoga in that kill he was able to get over in stock. And my problem there is that that was not their ideal plant position, because you wouldn't have opened up such a skinny line of sight there and then plant on the side where a long arm could occur. So I do truly think, James, that they wanted a window hop. They didn't have the pressure they needed, or wanted rather. And as a result now, well, they will lose out on a round that was seemingly theirs. Oxygen 2 rounds up.
Yeah, massive for Oxygen as they stretch their lead. In a way, that really should have been Empire's round. But a couple of little things, Vertical and Yoga in particular, like you were saying, I don't want to understate the fact that Vertical found that pick on a joystick, though, because that really got the ball rolling. You saw Oxygen rotate over to Bedroom. And, well, once again, leaning into these shields, they have been loving their Goyo. I wouldn't be surprised if later on in the tournament we start to see it banned against Oxygen, because they have been playing so much of it. And in tandem with that Ash ban, it really does give the attack a lot to think about.
We've been running the Goyo religiously on Oregon, and as you said, now it's come all the way over into Germany on Clubhouse. And I do like that they play it as well, because when you're going to ban the Ash, as we keep repeating here, there's so much utility you've denied from the attackers who usually have 3 Ash charges to work with, and they don't anymore. I don't know, Empire seems like they're weakened today, and I'm not sure if it's because Oxygen just knows exactly how to counter them, or whether or not they're just not showing up in a lot of their engagements, in a lot of their usual pushes that we expect from them. Not the best performance by them in any means, but we are in the upper bracket here, so even if Empire get knocked out in this best of 3, they still have an opportunity to do a meteoric run through the lower bracket. But that's not the problem right now. The problem for Empire right now is they want cash control, but it is heavily fortified. Multiple reinforcements, those shields we were talking about, ADSs, and multiple players looking to take advantage of anyone who walks on in.
Good opening pick, though, for Empire. Yoga goes down. Laxing to hold on to Cash, a C4 over the top. Does not land, and Dan from below to really start putting this pressure onto Laxing. Bullets from below. Laxing drops. He might actually make a play here. Dan flanked from Vertical. What a play from Oxygen. And they managed to refrag.
That was a beautiful bit of distraction method there from Laxing. He was hurt and they tunnel visioned on him, and Vertical got the backside as a result. Dan unable to have almost any impact on these rounds outside of his utility. Which is a bit of a shame, because we were highlighting him last map alongside Joystick for being one of the highest rated players. That has not translated here onto Clubhouse, onto their very own map pick here. Been a tough attacking few rounds here for Empire, and that is only continuing, but the man count has been evened. And this is Empire's best opportunity to try and take at least a round win here on their attack. Especially when this is a site they themselves really like to defend. So they know what it's all about here in Master and Gym. It's one of their favorite sites to go to in the past 3 months as a whole.
30 seconds left, though. Empire need to get a move on. Construction control. Vertical's tucked away. And I don't think Scyther knows about Vertical's position. It looks like Vertical might have another massive moment here. 5-0 for now, as Scyther has absolutely no clue. Vaulting on in. Another kill for Vertical. 7-0 now. And Empire rest all their hopes on the joystick. The Russian Cyborg can give Foxer a death, but can't do much more. Vaulting over, Laxing takes him down. Oxygen have a clean sweep of 3 defense bomb sites.
What an incredible showing here from Oxygen. My God, the glow up they had from the first couple of days. Okay, yes, they pulled in that 7-0, but that was against a team that we expected them to do quite well against, at least initially. Then they get to the second day of groups and they're struggling. They're seemingly, at the bottom of the leaderboard in their group. And then day 3 for them on their group stages. It just took a few days of getting that bread, quite literally, for the boys there. And all of a sudden, those carbs, they just absolutely unleashed here for the Oxygen boys. It has been an incredible glow up. That is something that I cannot understand. A lot of people who didn't watch all of the group stages will not be aware of the fact that Oxygen did struggle quite a bit in those group stages, barely got out of that last place position if it wasn't for the last day. And that momentum has carried on here against one of the top rated teams in Six Invitational as we currently stand. Unbelievable to me, because I'm telling you what, James, these are 2 of my favorite teams in the world. Empire being one of my favorite, as well as VP from the CIS region, and from NA, Oxygen is my favorite team. So if I was to pick with my heart here, I couldn't, but my brain is telling me Oxygen, they are absolutely flooring Empire here today.
Just on fire. Oxygen, as Empire take their tactical timeout, a moment to breathe. But like you were saying, you know, Empire, we do rate them quite highly, even though they had a really shortcoming in the EUL Stage 1. They came into SI. They've only dropped a single map so far. That was to Dark Zero in the group stage. They ended at the top of their group. They even beat BDS. Of course, that streak was broken just earlier today when they lost Oregon to Oxygen. And now, on this second map, Empire's own pick, and they are starting to be in danger of falling into that loser bracket. This is going to have to be a massive run to come back in this half, and then they'll need a really strong defense as well to double down and take us all the way to map number 3. But at the minute, I'm looking at Oxygen, and I'm impressed. Like, we said that they had a slow start at SI, but once we start to have a bit of an opportunity to reflect, they 7-0 Parabellum the opening game. That's amazing.
Yep.
Then their 3 losses, MIBR, NIP, TSM. Arguably 3 of the strongest teams in their group. You know, MIBR's already taken down Liquid, NIP's taken down BDS, TSM are yet to play, right? But they're going to likely have a fantastic game as well. They've been in hot form and they topped their group. So Oxygen can't beat themselves too much up for losing to those 3 teams. And on their final day, like you said, they had a fantastic run against Giants, Makers, and Space Station. So Oxygen, perhaps we didn't give them enough credit for their group stage performance. It's just because they tended to have their hardest games near the start that allowed them to make this run back at the end. And as a result, they've come in as underdogs to this match, but are outperforming our expectations.
Or maybe Empire misunderstood the matchup they were going into today. Maybe they, you know, didn't necessarily expect the firepower that Oxygen is bringing to this lobby right now. And they're on the back foot considerably so. 3 rounds deficit now. That is a lot of rounds to make up for, especially when you haven't been looking too hot. Good thing for Empire, though, and for the Empire fans out there, though, is that Team Empire, after the past 40 to 50 rounds that they've played on Clubhouse as a whole, they've been pretty 50-50. They've won about 50-50 of their attacking and defensive rounds, so if they don't do quite as well on their attacking side, it's very likely that they'll be able to pick up a few on their defensive, but at that point, they might be staring down the barrel of match point, and that is the last place you want to be as Shepard starts to open up the hatches that have been kaided. Thatcher's banned, so this is their only opportunity outside of the Kali, and not a lot of teams have been taking her since, I think stage 1, we barely even saw her anymore, really. It was stage 2 of last year where a couple of teams have tried her, but not quite as viable anymore.
Empire need to get a move on here on their attack. 1.5 minutes gone. I like the way that Oxygen have also changed up their strategy somewhat. Returning to this basement, but changing from a heavy roam to a heavy side. But the first pick is for Scyther. Vertical gets his first death of the game. Can you believe it? That's the Wamai Magnet's gone, so these burning will mean that that's the last of the denial for those projectiles. But hello there, says Kino as he takes down Always. And that Vulcan shield is not destroyed for free.
Well, he said, if you're going to throw things at me, I'm going to throw things at you. Tosses back a C4 in reply, and that was a beautiful bit of gameplay there from Kino. And he managed to also dodge the Go-Go shield popping off as well. That just shows the prowess here, and as Dan makes his entry, he'll eat one of those Grismonts, and he'll eat it face first, or rather, that was his own concussion bouncing back. I take it back. Oh, Yoga, he's going to get the headshot, but Empire, this is the first time in the late round they've had that man advantage here, and they might run away with it, and yes, they do. It is the first round on the board here for Empire, and it took them 3 in a row until they found their stead here. But Oxygen, well, they were in a pretty good position to win that one. I just think the overwhelming mechanical skill of Empire in the end there was what took that one. And if Empire can keep that trainer rolling, well, could spell disaster for at least the last 2 rounds of this half.
But we've finally seen some fight from Empire. There were so many rounds in a row, 3 in a row. Oxygen looked just about uncontested. Yes, we saw that plant from Empire, but Oxygen retaking that seemed to only be salt in the wound. This is a big moment for Empire. On the back of that tactical timeout, they have stepped it up. Of course, as Oxygen now return to Church and Arsenal, they lean back into that SSG roam that we saw from them earlier. And while this wasn't fully telegraphed in the operator pick phase, the reveal phase, as Kino 6 picks onto that castle, I still think the fact that there was that Vigil, the Mutant, the Mozzie there gives Empire an indication of what's happening here. So they're going to have to prove that not only can they take an anchor setup here on basement, but they can also attack against this roam setup.
I don't mind a bit of the SSG roam, and I keep saying it again and again. Empire is such a methodical team. They do happen to be the type of team that will commit to that full roam. They'll put everything they can into it, and that includes those Selma charges that they've been deploying on the Jacuzzi wall. As Oxygen finishes setting up this SSG roam, I do think yet again we will see it happening, almost as if Team Empire can't pull themselves away from those strats, from those dry runs that they do in scrims and beyond, where they're just turning around and going, we must clear, we must clear, we must clear. They could just rush blue and dirt. They could do it this way. But it looks like they just want to keep doing this full clear, and it hasn't paid too many dividends for them so far.
Dan's yet to find a kill. It's funny, every moment you look at the scoreboard and you're like, wow, okay, things have shaped up quite differently to how you might have realized. Dan, oh, he almost falls to those shots through the drone hole from Ryoka. My goodness. Dan falls back as he's so vulnerable now. A lick of damage is all that it'll take to put him down and out. Joystick on this entry frag upstairs, tracking down the castle of Kino. There are so many players here to contest, and that's a great shot there on the other side. As Joystick needs to commit to these shots, him and always together. C4 finds nothing. Once again, the track from Joystick. He drops below, waiting and looking to come for a flank, but there's Foxe, and Joystick goes down vertical as well. Empire picked apart.
This roam clear is falling to pieces even before it began. Oh, okay. Not sure about that one. Nevertheless, vertical will fall, and I believe that came out of a call. Dan, though, he'll square away the numbers. Alrighty, maybe we'll call it too early here, James. They're able to bring it back, and with whole half a round seemingly left to go, it'll be Oxygen to rotate back to site, laxing in Moto. Foxe over towards Church, and then Kino, he'll keep an eye out towards Dirt and Arsenal. There's so much time here for Empire to play with, and they have 3 Selmas. The Maverick's still alive. I do think that this is a possibility. They just need to keep cool, calm, collected.
They're gonna have to get to work, and they're gonna have to make steady progress until this round is over. You see the Moto hatch being worked on now by Shepard. Where is the eventual execute to come? We've seen Empire time and time again look for those kitchen executes, but they might be a bit worried without a sledge. Are they worried perhaps about any impact tricking from the defense? We can see that that's not the case. We don't know. If you're Empire, looks like a Moto take is on the menu. Just over 20 seconds left remaining. Empire have to get to work. They don't have any smokes. They have a bunch of utility, though, to work with. As Oxygen just hold on. It looks like it might actually be a kitchen execute. Very, very late. Diffuser goes down the main stairs. Dan to erupt into Arsenal as he starts to push on through. That Banshee to slow him down, but he finds the opening pick. Kino goes down. Shepard forcing this Diffuser onto the ground. Laxi and Foxe, the 2 OGs of the roster, but they cannot hold on. Not against Empire. And that's 2 rounds in a row. The Russians are back in the game.
What a brilliant bit of communication late round there. They were under the pump there. That time was holding them prisoner at the last 20 seconds of that round. And when I'm just trying to work out where are they going to have this push go on. They're opening up the kitchen hatch so very late. And what they ended up doing with that was being able to hold the rotate. They opened up Ash Wall with a quick impact and insert. And that entry kill, I'm going to call it, as they were walking through the Banshee was really the kicker for that one. The plant can go off. The cover can occur. And when I said they need to stay cool, calm, collected in the late round there, James, that's what I mean. You need to be able to make decisions under an immense amount of stress upon which that last 20 seconds was. And now Empire's experience is showing. And this is what will give them extra rounds, is being able to make decisions on the fly like that. That will give them the advantage when they're seemingly on the back foot.
We're really at a junction now, Jess, where Empire have come back from 0-3 and built this momentum on their half. That tactical timeout did them wonders. And Oxygen now just hoping to make the most of the lead that they extended at the start. A 3-3 half wouldn't be bad for Oxygen, but I'd be stretched to call it good as well. I think that it's very much even of course, the nature of the 3-3 half and the nature of the fact that we do have some variability on which side Clubhouse does favor. I have a feeling that Empire are going to bring the heat on their defense. So Oxygen, really, this is a must-win round for them, as it is a must-win round for Empire.
Well, Oxygen will go to CCTV. I've alluded to this before, one of the highest win rate sites on all of Clubhouse throughout 6 Invitational. And it also had some of the lowest win rates in regular leagues around the world. There's been quite a bit of a shift here at the 6 Invitational, at least in regards to what teams are being able to put on the board. And Clubhouse has been played quite frequently throughout as well. I mean, I've got 12 plays here throughout the group stage, so there's a bit of a plethora of data to go through just after these past week or so. Yet again, we will see Empire open up the right-hand side of the wall. And the reason I keep highlighting that right side of the wall as well, James, is just purely out of the fact that a lot of teams will open up the left. They'll try and go for that default plant. They'll get Garage, but Empire doesn't seem interested in Garage whatsoever. Their strategy is to avoid it as a whole. And now that the wall will slowly get opened up, I'm not sure which part he's missed here to make that wall soft. And he's going to have to analyze it with a drone because he can't put his feet in danger.
Might move though to do it with a drone, not taking the risk. He's actually going to go on the rappel to try and fix it up. Very vulnerable here at this point, but Scyther with the opener. Big pick here for Empire as the Wamai is taken out. Nice attempt at an impact trick for Yoga, but doesn't find anything. Doesn't want to get too aggressive, but it looks like there might even be a play down below. Was that vertical going into storage? As time goes on here, Shepard is really paying the price for not nailing that Maverick trick, as he is just desperately trying to finish this off. He can't land it, and so the smoke babes come through. Oxygen know that this has been the weakness. This is the linchpin for Empire.
You can see the rest of the players, over towards bedroom, waiting for him to finish his job over there. He is struggling. They need Dan and the rest of his equipment over towards the bedroom, but he is waiting to impact that wall over there. All is going down. This is where you were shot from last time.
No!
It is absolutely Groundhog Day for Joystick. Deja vu, and he will relive his nightmare on those main stairs.
Now in a 4 versus 4, but Empire have been slow, always playing a passive position. Finally, Scyther rotates, and we do have all the hard breach we need. That's a massive pick. 2K now, 3K surely for Scyther, as Empire desperately try to push on through. They have the man advantage. A nice close angle, but punished. Scyther's going massive. Empire tie up the half, and we end the first at a 3-3 split.
Well, this is the close game we wanted here, James. I am very happy to say that it won't be a runaway from Oxygen. They're coming on to Empire's map pick here, so it does seem a little dangerous for Empire because they lost the first map. They weren't able to push it into overtime either. So here on Clubhouse is do or die for them. Otherwise, they are going to be sent to the losers bracket, and Oxygen will continue their run in the upper bracket. There's still a possibility for a whole third map here. And as we get to this second half here, this is where things really kick off. Either Empire is going to show why they have some of the highest clutch statistics on Clubhouse in the world, and the player that's been doing that consistently has been Shepard on this exact side as well. And I know that's such a funny statistic to have, but it's one of those things I have just vividly remembered throughout EUL stages is how many clutches Shepard has got on Clubhouse. It's been unreal. It's a very popular map for Empire, so obviously there's more opportunity. But nevertheless, watch out for some of those support players. They have been unstoppable.
Yeah, and while we are looking at Empire here to make this comeback a reality in their second half, I'm looking at Oxygen as well. They started so strong, Jess. Those first 3 rounds were incredibly convincing. Vertical in particular, he hasn't had the best tournaments so far, and traditionally Oxygen has relied on Vertical a little bit throughout the NAL. He has been typically one of their highlight players, and he had a bit of a slow start here in the SI, but of course he was 7-1 earlier. Like, this is just insane that what this guy has accomplished. Sitting at 9-3 at the moment, 3.0 KD. It'll be difficult for him to maintain that as the game goes on, but I'm looking at Oxygen to keep up this momentum. As the exothermic charge detonates on the Kennel's wall, that is one efficient and fast way to get that breach open.
They don't mess around, do they? They don't try and make the wall soft. They don't try and make it this elongated, complex process. They just open up a little hole, get rid of the mute jammer, and then make quick work of it. And I like that from them because they can bring Kino on the Thermite. He really works well on that defensive operator. And now they'll all start to work on Garage, seemingly. Biggest thing for me about this is that we've seen Empire completely ignore Garage. Now, of course, Oxygen, they want a little bit of a piece of it. And this will be our first opportunity to see whether or not this hold here from Empire will work. Whether this double-layered prong with a little bit of a line of sight open will be too much to handle. Look at them, they're getting swarmed. And Foxay finally gets Joystick as he dances around the motorcycle in the bottom of Garage.
Big opening pick here for Oxygen as Dan's looking for something in reply. At the run out on strip, can't see anyone outside of Garage. Just narrowly missing was he Kino and Vertical, who were their potential victims, who fortunately did not meet their fate. Kino is now droned out a lot of Garage. Is there a player at Rafters? Because I wasn't actually sure there was. In fact, no, completely clear as we see the rest of Empire fortifying that site. Rafters is free for the taking. As a result, Oxygen have a really strong position to execute this Garage attack.
They've also got Laxing below with the skeleton keys. He'll surely start to make it rain from below when they want to go for this execute. It means Empire will have to start dancing. There's also a player below to stop the C4, so it's only Scyther and of course those angles from above for the C4s to rain over. But when you've got 40 seconds to play with here, you can bait out every single one and be absolutely fine. Red stairs, not safe anymore, and it's Verticals for the taking. And when you're down to 30 seconds and you're being encircled, you're gonna have to pull out the best kills in the world. But it's a flawless for Oxygen as they're able to just make it rain left, right, and center. My goodness, their utility usage is what I feel to be unprecedented in the North American scene. It is incredible the things they can get done in just half a round even.
Yeah, an amazing convincing round there from Oxygen. Flawless. And it started strong. That pick onto Joystick, we really can't understate that because at that point, with so much time still left on the clock, Empire had no one in Garage. By the time Oxygen droned that out and took that control, they had a whole minute to execute. It almost didn't matter that we had such a good red stairs push from Vertical because Oxygen was just so well set up for that execute. Empire, you mentioned they had some forms of plant denial, perhaps a gas or perhaps some C4s thrown from Cash, but the Vertical play was negated thanks to Oxygen dedicating players down there, and they overwhelmed the site, picked Empire apart, and we're still looking at these Russian players like, where is the form that we saw in groups?
Yep. Absolutely. I do have to agree here. I do think that Oxygen overwhelmingly, obviously on Oregon walking away with a win, but also coming in on their attack now. I was waiting for this second half purely out of the fact that the way they performed on attack on the first map, which was Oregon, was unreal. Their speed, their utility usage again and again was just impeccable. The coordination and the teamwork from Oxygen is why they are NAL's best team currently. So I'm very impressed, but I'm also quite scared because they're an attacking-sided team overall, at least for the past, 4 or 5 months of stage 1. But their attacks are terrifying to watch. They are a dominant force, and not even Team Empire seems to be able to work it out.
Only half a minute down, and OXG have seemingly taken map control and starting to set up. This is really good time management for them. Once again, you mentioned that as to be one of their strengths. For me, highlight player has certainly been Vertical. He has just been on fire today. And it's not just in terms of his frags, but he fulfills his role very well. And as he now waits at the top of blue stairs, making sure that any kind of movement within blue would be punished, the rest of OXG get to work in preparing this site. Is that the kitchen hatch done as of yet? It looks like OXG will be relying on the thermite for that kitchen hatch, and that's where Kino sits at the moment. 2 exothermics still in the pocket, but he will need Laxing to come over and make sure Dan cannot get an impact trick off.
Always already has that C4 ripped. I'm wondering if he's waiting for Laxing to step out into the hallway there and catch him off guard the same way that Kino caught them off guard. It's actually for the main stairs. Silhouette deceived me. As the crouch wall comes down main stairs, a little bit of sound indicator will be enough for him. All he needs is a confirmation and the toss will come out. But with the top of that wall open, Yoga knows that that is what is likely going to occur. So he's going to have to dance with fate here. As always, he doesn't seem deterred yet, but Dan, he'll fall below the kitchen hatch. And surely this means for Oxygen now, all they need is a bit of blue pressure, or rather dirt pressure, and they'll be able to drop kitchen hatch here and do some serious damage.
Here comes Vertical on the entry, a minute left. So much time to work with for Oxygen as they start to encircle that side. Yorker finds one from bottom main, that's joystick down. Vertical locks down that player into dirt side, they're dueling the best that he can with that SMG-11. There goes the smoke, here comes the plant for Kino, and that cross is successful, but denied eventually as Vertical takes down Always. It's all falling apart for Empire, and there's just about nothing Shepard can do in the 1 versus 4. This will need to be an ace. Retake defuse. Kino shuts him down. Oxygen go up 5-3 and are 2 rounds away from sending Empire to the lower bracket.
I want to know if there was a single talent in the world, because we all put our predictions in the day before, if there was any talent at all that predicted 1, Oxygen, and 2, a 2-0 scoreline. Because I certainly did not. I actually put a 2-0 scoreline for Empire, even though in my heart I really wanted Oxygen to bring that underdog story to fruition. That is seemingly playing out in front of our eyes now. And the problem with it is that I kind of feel we all underestimated Oxygen. Just that little bit. And I think it was that second day of their play day in the group stages that made me feel that maybe they just weren't in their heads, you know, or rather they were too much in their heads coming to Paris, playing on LAN again, but in an international environment. But I was so wrong, and I'm so happy to have been so wrong, because they are showing that they could seriously make a meteoric run through this winners bracket. I am in utter shock. That is really all I can say, because it is very impressive what they've done on both halves.
I think the standings in Group B were deceiving for Oxygen. They sat on the bottom for such a long time, but when you take into consideration the fact that the 3 teams they lost games to were arguably the 3 best teams in the bracket. So it's not that, I guess, surprising that Oxygen would drop games to them, and a lot of them were fairly close. 2 of Oxygen's wins were 7-0s. Oxygen is the team the only team in SI with 2 7-0s to their name. And when they're on, boy, are they on. And they're certainly switched on today against Empire. This is shaping up to be a 2-0 as Empire have a little bit of a buffer to work with, and they're on defense, but so far, Jess, that hasn't meant much, as Oxygen have found the only 2 attack rounds in their half.
After what Team Empire managed to do in the group stages, there were some serious high hopes here. That is slowly dwindling as we get into our 9th round now. Oxygen, it just seems like every round they win, it gives them a little bit more fuel and adds it to the fire. And the speed at which they start to get all of this open just increases, which is very impressive considering they have got to be one of the fastest teams in all of SI on their attack, outside of maybe FaZe, the Latin American team who has shown that they can get onto site and get a plan happening within the first minute and a half consistently. And I think consistency has been the best friend of Oxygen here on their attack. They are a scary team with really good coordination. And they are definitely a team to be feared, because utility, intel, and mechanical skill all mixed together in a really nice batch here for Oxygen has meant that they are very likely going to 2-0 Empire if they don't have an answer soon.
And we're just not seeing much aggression here from Empire. It's the second time they're defending Church and Arsenal. Here comes an impact trick. That was actually very well read. Kino went for the corner thermite charge. The exothermic actually was on the wood, which would have blown the hatch. But if Dan can land the second impact trick, this would be massive. Laxing's the player to cover, and Dan decides better of it. Doesn't want to overextend. Instead, Empire let that hatch subside.
They've managed to waste a couple of minutes as a whole, and whilst I was complimenting Oxygen on their ability to get things open nice and fast, it seems they've stagnated a little bit. We know that Yoga is waiting for the bait, and Foxay, he was already in moto. Didn't you hear him, boys? What? You got your headphones on back to front. Unfortunately, they're not able to get the trade on that. That just seems like the recurring story for Empire, as they unfortunately haven't been able to trade much this entire match.
Fox has found 2 kills now, putting his team in a 5 versus 3, always to hold on with the Elder. As Vertical starts to push on forward, Vert has been on fire. He's been in red hot form and always needs to hold on to blue. Dan feeling the pressure. Kino goes down. Diffuser cold on the ground side. They're looking to cover, using that gas babe as that push in comes from the ash wall into Arsenal now. Yoga finds one, takes down Dan. Only 2 players left for Empire as there's 11 seconds left on the clock. Oxygen forcing this execute down Empire's throats as they are gasping for air. But Oxygen send Empire to the lower brackets.
May have got ahead of yourself just one round there, James.
We'll send Empire to the lower bracket.
Got you. Just making sure that I'm in the right spot here, because I was sitting here wondering if I was blind for a hot second there. I was like, hang on, was I not aware of the stakes of that round? But nevertheless, as we're both, I know you are either standing up at your sit-stand desk right now, or you're on the edge of your seat, wherever you are, you and I are both very aware of the stakes of this round, because as Empire stares down the barrel of match point against them with a 3-round deficit, they have not been able to stick multiple rounds together in either series so far of maps. Not on Oregon, they were not able to put 3 rounds together. They've not been able to do as well here on Clubhouse. It has been a little better than we saw in Oregon, but it's not enough for me to confidently say to the viewers out there that they are going to be able to put 3 rounds in a row just to get to overtime. I am seriously convinced here that this will be a 2-0. And for those wondering, because I know I will get this on my Twitter later on, whether it's EU over NA or NA over EU, all right, NA, you may have won today, unless we see some absolute monstrous plays here from Empire for the next 3, 5 rounds, and then of course onto the 3rd map, should we even manage to make it that far.
And Empire haven't even won a defense yet. Can you believe that? Defense at Clubhouse, Oxygen are walking all over them. 1 round trying to attack, or rather trying to defend Cash CCTV, 2 rounds of Church Arsenal, and nothing will stick. All of these rounds haven't even been close. Oxygen always find their openings. And now finally we go to Gym and Bedroom for the first time. A last-ditch effort for Empire, and Oxygen, there's just nothing stopping them.
Well, it's the calm before the storm, I feel, as you can see Oxygen attempting to get control over towards CCTV. That'll be their first part of ingress for them. It's not a Go-Go shield on red this time for Empire, because they're not going to bring the Go-Go the same way that we saw Oxygen bring it religiously, multiple maps. Oh my god, Scyther, it's raining upon him, whether it's concussions or whether it's going to be grenades. That player snakes on in, and as he gets tunnel vision, Kino will put him down. And this is the control that Oxygen were looking for. I would love to know after this map how many opening kills on Oxygen's attack they've managed to get throughout this entire series, because every time they get the man advantage, it just seems to crumble for Empire.
Bomb has been located.
Well, every single attack, Oxygen have found the opening pick. Every single time, Empire has failed to trade it back. Finally, we see that pattern change, as always gets a very aggressive C4 up the logistic hatch and sends Fox A flying. 1:11 to go, and we still have a strong position for Oxygen. With cash control and a minute to work with, they can start to push on in, but there's a lot of damage can be done by always in logistic.
Dan's doing a little bit of a sneaky hide behind the desk as well. He'll probably pop up to assist always if a push through stock occurs. I believe the Bark of Laxing is aware that there is a player there. You can see him waiting for the players to give him confirmation that he can drop and peek, but they're waiting for something. Maybe it's drones, maybe it's intel. But they certainly haven't opened up Jacuzzi, not to my knowledge here, and Kino doesn't look like he's in a position to do so. And like I said before, as they run in, James, oh no, Danny was in the corner. This is going to be the comeback that Empire needs. That was a convincing one. And it was almost like we just got a little bit of a breath of fresh air here for Empire. As Oxygen, they'll lose their match point, but they have so much of a buffer room to work with.
And there were so many things I liked about that execute onto logistic from Oxygen. We saw Kino from the master balcony. He threw a flash grenade all the way deep towards the money pit where we saw an Empire player sitting. But as you said, Dan, snug in that corner, held on. And there were too many players for Empire, for Oxygen to deal with. They did not have the information. And that gets Empire one step closer to this comeback. 2 more rounds of defense going to be needed here to meet that 3-round par and force Oxygen to OT. Should we get there, we will see Oxygen start on that attack. They have been so strong on their attack. Empire really need to step up. They finally have their first round of defense. They need to run with this momentum.
You're absolutely right. This is their opportunity now to shift the tides and throw the momentum into their own hands. I know we said, was it last map or that the attack timeout came out and Empire was able to put some rounds on the board. I mean, it just feels like it's been so long between map 1 and map 2 here because we've just been so enthralled by what Oxygen are putting on our screen. But I do think we are seeing a seriously weakened Empire at the moment. Oxygen just knows exactly how to deal with them. And this nice little drone here from Yoga, not able to yet get it. I believe Dan finally does. But these are the kind of pre-placed drones that I complimented Oxygen on in the Oregon map, which was map 1 they walked away with. And now they're trying to do very much the same here on Clubhouse. It's a bit of a trickier map, of course, but Empire a bit late to set up as well. You can just tell that they're trying to deal with what's being thrown at them, but there's a lot of stress to it.
Once again, Oxygen making short work of the wall.
Oh.
In fact, the second one actually does manage to get through that. So Kino is going to have to get this thermite charge redeployed. There are still 2 impacts here for Dan. If he can land this, that's really big. There you go. Both of the thermite charges are gone. Exothermics in short supply here for Kino. Foxay is going to have to deal with the wall the old-fashioned way on the Maverick, like we saw Empire doing. And of course, that's going to be quite difficult. And it's going to waste a lot of time here. I really like that adaptation from Empire.
Yeah, and I love it. And all of those shotgun holes in the wall make it very difficult for the Maverick to be able to see and deal with the wall. And that's why you can see Foxay having to use quite a bit of his gas, because between the soft breach of the wall and the reinforcement part, it means that the gas will hit intermittent parts of it and make it very, very difficult. And that's why Foxay is just having to work on this consistently. It's wasted about half the round, 2 exothermics. Everyone's still alive. But now it's up to Oxygen to get back all of that time they've had to waste working on the platform wall. You can see Kino over towards that construction and CCTV window. I'm wondering whether or not they'll try and get this wall open towards construction and deal with it that way. And now that they don't have any exothermics to work with, I wonder how they plan on doing this.
It can be very difficult with just the Mav. That's a nice pick from Dan. Aggressive here in cash, but that's a lovely nade. How does that land? Dan's position spotted out, the diffuser at the AC window. As Dan's continuing to hold on, projectiles raining over his head, but Joystick finally steps in and gets onto that scoreboard. Oxygen looking for something here, and there's 3 versus 4. A peek comes on through. Foxay looking to get some information, looking to get a line of sight, but always steps up once again. And Empire are making this comeback a reality. Joystick takes down Vert. Foxay, you're all by yourself. What good can you do? 20 seconds left on the clock, and Empire have made this run look possible here, all the way back and into the game, sending us to the 12th round of regulation. Foxay can sit here and teeter on the edge of this peak as long as he likes, but there's nothing he can do to get himself back into this round. Empire make it work, and they take us all the way to round 12.
Now, James, I'm sure you'll allow me to say what I'm just about to say, because everyone was thinking it, myself included, and I didn't want to say it because I didn't want it to come to fruition. I didn't want to double down on it. But do you think you owe Oxygen an apology should this go to OT for caster cursing in the round before the match?
I take no responsibility for the words that come out of my mouth.
Okay.
No responsibility for any magical curses they may or may not inflict upon any teams.
Roger. All right.
You know what Oxygen are going to do? they're not going to listen to me. They're going to take a tactical timeout, have a little bit of a chat about what's going down. They really need to get a move on, honestly. Like, this has been a position where they've started to get choked out of their lead. And this is where we look at players like Kino, who have just been such heavy hitters, and Oxygen have relied upon him. And all things considered, he is a bit of a rookie. He has very little Tier 1 or LAN experience alongside Yoga. Will they crack under that pressure?
Surely not. Just such a good performance from them throughout the group stages. I mean, that's when you get all the nerves out, is when you're in the group stage, you're in the LAN environment. Okay, maybe it's not a main stage, and this year there's no audience, so there's not that added pressure on top of you. But that's where you get out all the jitters. And I do sincerely think they did. And it didn't seem to stop, the Zofia of Yoga from doing what he needed to do in multiple different rounds. Okay, the second day was a bit wishy-washy, but I don't think that really stopped them. And I know for a fact that you brought up the Jesse Chick from the analyst desk in NAL had maybe, posited that might be an outcome for them. But Yoga currently, before this game at least, sat on a 1.2 rating, only 0.01 behind Fox A, which meant he was one of the top 5 rated players in all of the group stages. So I think that whilst, we've got a couple of rookies, it hasn't stinted their approach to SI in any way, shape or form.
Every single round here that Empire gets puts that pressure back onto Oxygen. I guess I wonder, what puts more pressure on you? Being down 6-3 on series point, or getting reverse swept all the way back to overtime after blowing your lead from 6-3? Like, what is more demanding on your mental position? I feel like it's the latter. I feel like Oxygen would be really feeling the pressure should Empire be able to push this the whole way. And honestly, Jess, I do think it is possible. I think it is very, very possible, the way that Empire have been tightening up their game, for us to see overtime.
I'm starting to think you're a paid actor here, James. Not gonna lie.
That's literally what I am. Is literally.
Well, I mean literally. But you know what I'm saying in regards to Empire here. A little bit worried you might be one of the heavy hitters here for their performance. Just saying. But I won't elevate that any further. Big thing for me now is that probably your theory crafting there about what's worse. Well, for Oxygen, for them, they've been saying one more for the past few rounds. And now this is their last one more before it is overtime, and they might get another chance for it, but this is seriously their last chance from a mental standpoint in the regular time of this round to prove that they are one of the best attacking teams in all of the SI stage, which is something I truly, truly believe.
It would certainly be an upset should Oxygen take this, but they've certainly proven it's possible. We'll see if Empire can hold on. Once again, they're going back to Church and Arsenal. They yet to win this after trying it twice. Oxygen have looked so good attacking this bomb site. Every single time they found that opening pick, but they've lost 2 rounds in a row now. Cash and Bedroom. They need to really just lock it in here and now.
My big question mark is, why aren't they trying to throw these C4s up in the kitchen? They know the buck is always going in there. They know that the thermite runs in, stands over the hatch. I mean, that's a good opportunity maybe to throw up an early C4 and catch Laxing off guard. I know he's been heavily careful. That's something that it seems like Empire are lacking here. It's like they just seemingly are missing from the first part of the round, the early round, and maybe they're worried. They want to play cool, calm, and passive here so they don't give away too many picks, because you don't want to be the player that gets opening killed and then possibly leads your team to miss out on overtime. So I can understand the fear here. This is not the Empire we usually know.
I like some of the changes we are seeing from Empire. Maestro on the table. The Wamai here made his way in. Empire really looking to lock down this site. As the gas goes out, Kino finds the first pick. Dan down. This is still match point for Oxygen with 30 seconds left. Foxay's had some big moments here. As that C4 gets the trade onto Yoga. Bottom main stairs. Foxay to take his position. Nade goes on through. That'll have to be a bang and a half, but the ADS catches it. Foxay can't land those shots as Empire can hold firm. 20 seconds left as Oxygen start to make their execute happen. The drop through the kitchen hatch as Kino holds that diffuser down, starts to get the play going. Lexing finds it, and all of a sudden, it's only always. He's the last man standing to hold back match point. Plant is down, but Oxygen have stepped up and filled everything that North America has wanted from them. Taking down Empire here would be everything, and Empire just have to collect themselves always to pick up their teammate, but Oxygen USA are here to stay, and they take their way forward into the upper brackets.
Well, it would seem we got that storyline we were looking for. Technically on paper, Oxygen were the underdogs coming into this matchup, but oh how they have proved that they can take down the Russian